It's just a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle.
Catholics around the world mourn Pope Francis. We have extensive coverage of the pontiff's passing tonight. We'll take you live to the Vatican and have reaction from here at home.
A traffic stop gone wrong. 2 officers opened fire on a group of 6 people in a car. 1 person is now in life-threatening condition. We'll tell you what happened.
Plus, you still have a few hours to cast your ballot. Early voting ends tonight, and lineups have been reported across the country.
And the Battle of Ontario returns to the playoffs for the first time in 21 years, and it starts with Leafs destroying the Sens in Game 1. Can they do it again tomorrow?
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Phil Perkins.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Welcome to Live at 5, and thanks for being with us. The Catholic world is mourning Pope Francis tonight, who is widely considered one of the most progressive pontiffs in modern history.
The 88-year-old is being remembered by many for his charming, humble, and candid style. And we're out learning more about the cause of his death. The Vatican says he died of a stroke that put him into a coma and led to heart failure. Francis was admitted to hospital on February 14th for a respiratory illness that developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there before being released. He was history's first Latin American pontiff who signaled a very different tone for the papacy, stressing humility over hubris for a Catholic Church plagued by scandal. After being named Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he was elevated to cardinal in 2001 and was elected pope in 2013.
Profondo dolore, devo annunciare la morte del nostro Santo Padre Francesco.
And following Catholic tradition, the pontiff's death was formally announced by a group of cardinals. The Vatican Camerlengo said Pope Francis, quote, taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially toward the poorest and the most marginalized.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
And hours before he died, Francis made an unplanned Easter appearance in St. Peter's Square, surprising thousands of worshipers. After waving to the crowd for several minutes, he asked an archbishop to read his speech, which was a global appeal for peace.
And Pope Francis' most lasting impact in Canada is likely to be his apology for the legacy of residential schools on Canadian soil. He apologized during a tour of Canada in 2022, months after meeting with an Indigenous delegation in Rome. Now, the apology was one of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. The Pope said that he was sorry that some members of the Church participated in the abuse, cultural destruction, and forced assimilation of Indigenous peoples here. Many Indigenous people said the apology was necessary, but some said it didn't go far enough. And Pam Palmater is the chair of Indigenous Governance at TMU. She joined us live to talk about the Pope's apology and his service to others.
He did what some of the Indian residential school survivors wanted, and that is important, that he came here and he offered them the apology that they truly, honestly needed. If you look at a larger scale, he has advocated for the rights of Indigenous peoples. He has supported Indigenous land defenders and their calls to protect the planet and act on climate change. He has very much been promoting human rights across the board.
And for more on this loss, we're joined live tonight by Neil McCarthy, Director of Public Relations and Communications for the Archdiocese of Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us, and our deepest condolences to you. What is running through your mind as you think back on the Pontiff's life and legacy?
Well, it's been a tough day. Obviously, the shock this morning of waking up and hearing the news of the Holy Father's passing, especially when we just saw those images of him yesterday at St. Peter's Square, speaking briefly to the crowds assembled for Easter Sunday. At the same time, we have to be realistic and say that, he was 88 years old, had significant health issues. We were really concerned about a month ago and thought that maybe he had turned the corner, but it's in God's hands and it's God's plan that unfolds. So here we are today, and it's prophetic in many ways that he passed on Easter Monday, and certainly a time of real sadness, and at the same time celebrating the life of someone who gave so much to so many.
Explain that, how he passed on Easter Monday. He had that show of, well, it looked like a lot of strength as we read. You know, he asked to read that speech about peace on Easter Sunday for him just to pass 24 hours later. What is that? What's the significance there for you, at least?
Well, we've just gone through Holy Week as Christians, the holiest time of the year. So Good Friday, you have that remembrance of the death of Jesus, and then you move to the joy of Easter Sunday, the resurrection. And so I guess for Catholics and Christians, when we see that the Holy Father's passed, obviously we're sad that he's no longer with us here on earth, but as Christians we believe this is just one part of our journey. The earthly journey is not the end. And we got that message on Easter Sunday, and so fittingly we had that yesterday, today when we learned of the Holy Father's passing, and the idea that we're not in charge. And as much as we like to be and would want to be in the world, at the end of the day, whether it's our frailty, we have to just give it up to God, and that's what that we do as Christians.
The Pope spent much of his time making amends, and that included issuing apologies to sexual abuse survivors. Here in Canada, it was when he apologized to our Indigenous peoples. How do you think that shaped the Catholic Church's legacy?
Well, this is a Pope who was humble. Humility was really one of the hallmarks of his papacy, and compassion, and talked about being a field hospital to the marginalized. And we saw that. I mean, just a few days ago in Rome, he was visiting with prisoners. Immigrants and refugees were very close to his heart. And of course, for Canadians, the pilgrimage, the penitential pilgrimage he made to our country. I was blessed to be able to go over with the Indigenous delegation in March 2022. And, he listened. He spent hours listening to the survivors of residential schools, the elders, the young people who were there, heard their stories. He was so moved that he said, I want to come to Canada, not in a year or two, but I want to come in 3 months. And if you know anything about organizing a papal visit, 3 months to organize it is extremely challenging. But he said, I want to do this. This is important enough to me. And we remember that at that time he was 85 in a wheelchair. He had canceled a planned trip to Africa. So it was that important that he wanted to be on Canadian soil, to have that penitential pilgrimage to really open a new chapter of healing and reconciliation in our country.
And so with that, his connection to people, of all walks of life, we just saw a live shot of the Vatican there. How do you believe that the reception will be on his remembrance? Like the ceremony itself?
Sorry, I was just having a bit of hard time hearing you there.
No, just about his,
the legacy of the Pope will live on.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who, from that first day in St. Peter's Square, I remember being there, March 13th, 2013, when he said, please pray for me, asked everyone, how are you doing this evening? Sort of an informal greeting, and then shunned the papal palace, wanted the simplicity. He talked about that today. We heard his plans for his burial, not at the St. Paul's Basilica, but at St. Mary Major, a church very close to his heart, and just a simple casket with Franciscus. And so from the beginning to the end, that humility, that compassion, modeling the face of Jesus to love and serve, that's certainly what we'll remember, and we're celebrating even in death this week.
Phil talked about that surprise Easter appearance that stunned thousands of worshipers. I think what a lot of people find remarkable is that we saw a pontiff who was speaking to the people, who was committing to service hours before the end of his life, doing what he did till the very end, which is talking about peace. What do you think that said about him as a religious leader?
Well, I think it's a message that should resonate with all of us. The idea of, putting others first, modeling again that model of Jesus to love and serve others. He always asked people to please pray for me at the end of every speech, or at the end of Mass, his audiences, that sort of thing. I think it's a good lesson for all of us in a world that's sort of consumed in many ways with secularism and how much money we make, or the house we live in, the size of our car, those kinds of things. It's more about the relationships, and the Pope really accentuated that and said it's about building bridges, touching the heart. It's not leading with the teaching and the doctrine necessarily. It's leading by example. And so, we thank him for a life of service, humble service, more than 50 years as a priest and 12 years as a pope, and he will be sorely missed.
No doubt. All right, Neil McCarthy, Director of Public Relations and Communications for the Archdiocese of Toronto. Thanks so much for talking to us about the Pope's legacy. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. And stay with us right here on CP24. We're going to have more extensive coverage of the pontiff's passing. For now, we'll take a quick break. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, the province's police watchdog probing an officer-involved shooting at Bathurst and Shepherd that left one person critically injured. The SIU says 2 officers opened fire after an interaction.
Well, it looks like we have some problems and a little bit of light rain. If you're making your way out this hour, just checking out the drive on the 401 westbound in the collector lanes. This is just as you make your way through Meadowvale. Collision involving 2 vehicles. Center lane is occupied. And you know what? Not seeing too much of a delay, but drive a bit of extra care. This rain coming down is making for a very slick commute. 401 on the eastbound side slows anywhere from Dixie and sections out towards Leslie. And it looks like we might have a problem. It's a stalled transport truck partially in the end of the on-ramp from Dixie. So also drive with a bit of extra caution. And MTO was reporting problems. Actually, Toronto Transportation was reporting problems on the DVP. Here's the issue. Northbound Don Valley Parkway. It's the end of the acceleration lane from Eglinton. It is a collision, and it does have the right lane occupied. Also getting word of some possible problems happening on the eastbound Gardner at Parklawn. Can't see it on camera yet, but reports of a collision that does have the right lane blocked. I will send it back to the both of you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
All right, Adjo, thank you. Well, CP24 has obtained dramatic security video of police shooting into a vehicle during a traffic stop in North York.
Yeah, take a look at this. This video shows officers interacting with someone inside a red Lexus that was pulled over near Bathurst and Shepherd around 11 o'clock last night. Shortly after, one officer rushes to the front of the car and a second officer moves to the rear, and both begin shooting into that vehicle.
A shooting sent one person to the hospital with life-threatening injuries where they still are right now. The Special Investigations Unit says it's been told by Toronto Police that there was an exchange of gunfire, but they're currently working on obtaining a warrant to search the Lexus for a gun.
There were a total of 6 occupants in the vehicle that was stopped, and one of the males is in life-threatening condition in hospital. We don't yet know exactly information about the firearm that may or may not have been used. Early information indicates that there was an exchange of gunfire. That's what Toronto Police have told us. However, I'm unable to confirm that at this time.
The SIU is called in anytime someone is seriously injured or killed while interacting with police.
It is 5:14 right now. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, still to come, Election Day is 1 week away now, and today is the last day of advance polls. You have until 9 o'clock tonight if you want to cast your ballot ahead of time. Welcome back. Canadians will cast their ballots 1 week from now, selecting the next prime minister and government to lead our country over the next 4 years.
Liberal leader Mark Carney was campaigning in Prince Edward Island this morning. He made a healthcare announcement promising to hire more doctors and nurses if elected.
The most pressing need in our healthcare system is for healthcare professionals. Right now, more than 6.5 million Canadians don't have access to a family doctor or nurse practitioner. We'll help tackle this shortage by working with the provinces and territories to create more spaces in medical schools like this one and more residency positions so trained doctors can gain experience. We'll also help doctors with the costs of opening a community practice, whether it's the space itself or the medical equipment that they need.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was campaigning at a construction site in Etobicoke this morning. He promised a Conservative government would build 2.3 million homes in 5 years if elected.
Our Conservative plan to axe the federal sales tax will increase that by 30,000 homes per year. Second, we are going to incentivize municipalities to cut their development taxes by 50,000 homes. It's $50,000. When you cut the sales tax and the municipal taxes on home building by a total of $100,000 a home, you stimulate well over 50,000 additional home builds to bring it up to about 300,000 homes per year.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh continues his focus on British Columbia, where he's now campaigning for several days. During a stop in Nanaimo, he promised an NDP government would expand pharmacare.
No one should have to worry about the cost of their medication. We've heard so many heartbreaking stories of seniors cutting their pills in half, skipping prescriptions, parents who look at the cost of the medication that they need for their kids and then look at their bills and say, what do I choose? What do I give up? That should not be a choice that anyone in this country makes. And so we're going to fight back and make sure we expand pharmacare with the ultimate goal of having a completely universal and public pharmacare for everyone in our country.
Now, the latest poll from Nanos Research for CTV News and the Globe and Mail shows the Liberals holding on to the lead in party support.
Liberals are at 43.7% support, while the Conservatives are down 2.5% to 36.3% support. That gives the Liberals a lead over 7 points. The NDP are up by 2% to 10.7% support.
Now, when it comes to who people want to see as their next prime minister, support for Mark Carney unchanged, but he still has a double-digit lead over Pierre Poilievre. Carney is at 47.4% support. You take a look at how that compares to Pierre Poilievre, who's now sitting at 33.2% support, down almost a point. And NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is up by just a bit. He's sitting at only 6% support tonight.
What we're seeing is the little bit of negative pressure on the Conservatives and the NDP being a little up coming out of the debate. Maybe that, why don't we call it the scrappy sing? In the French and the English debates kind of paid off a little. And, you know, the thing is the NDP have had a really tough election and they're back at a level where they started. So maybe a bit like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. He's back to where he was, but, you know, still not a great score.
Parliament today, editor Catherine de Klerk spoke to CP24 about where party leaders will be focusing their attention in the final days of the campaign.
There's going to be a big focus on hitting those key battlegrounds, places where you want to offer incumbents their support, get them to keep their seats in house, as well as put ridings that could be pickup ridings. So for the Conservatives, for example, they're going to be focusing a lot on the GTA. These are the 905 ridings that Stephen Harper won.
Well, today is the final day. Advanced polls will be open for the federal election. You still have a couple of hours if you want to cast your ballot early.
Just a bit, yeah. Turnout for the first day of advanced voting was record-setting. Elections Canada says nearly 2 million Canadians showed up to cast a ballot on Friday. The agency says it made adjustments to handle high traffic after some voters stood in long lineups in cities across the country. Voters can cast their ballots from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. So as Lena said, you got a couple more hours to do it. You need to show ID and proof of address.
Now, tomorrow is the deadline for those who want to vote by mail. To register to do so, voters can apply online or by contacting any Elections Canada office. They'll then receive a voting kit. The completed ballots need to be received by Elections Canada on April 28th by the time specified in your kit. Once someone applies to vote by mail, they cannot vote at advanced polls or on Election Day.
It's 5:22 right now. You're watching Live at 5.
Leafs fans are celebrating the team's victory in Game 1 of the first Battle of Ontario in 21 years. We're going to hear from those fans coming up next.
Welcome back. NHL playoff hockey. The best. The Maple Leafs opened their postseason with a decisive win. That's one way to put it. Against the Ottawa Senators last night.
Giroux let it go. Puck comes back to the blue line. Knocked down by the Maple Leafs. Ahead. It goes. Marner's got a breakaway. He's in on goal. Deke shoots.
Mitch Marner had a goal and 2 assists to help guide the Leafs to a 6-2 victory in Game 1 of the Battle of Ontario. That game marked the first playoff matchup between the two teams in 21 years.
Yeah. Ottawa looks a little outmatched right now. The Leafs hit the ice earlier today for practice at the Ford Performance Center in Etobicoke. Game 2 goes tomorrow night here in Toronto. Now, before the Leafs head to Ottawa for Game 3 on Thursday.
Well, we got to protect a lot better than we did. I thought in the second period that they had a few opportunities there after the power plays. We're a little loose. We got to do a better job there, and I think we can do. I think power plays and penalty kills take a little rhythm out of the game a little bit, but I'd like to see us a little more hunt and hounding on the forecheck.
It's always obviously good to start off on the right foot. I thought we did a good job of staying disciplined. Obviously, a lot of penalties last night. I liked our start. I thought we were competitive. Stoley played great. It's only going to get harder. So, little details that, you still want to clean up and be better for tomorrow. We know they're going to be ready to go again.
And for a look ahead to tomorrow's game 2, we go live to CP24's Siege Alou. Leafs fans got to be feeling pretty good about
it. Got to go up
this.
2-0, right, Siege?
Yeah, Lena, Phil, today is a great day to wake up and be a Leafs fan. If you were at Maple Leaf Square yesterday, you probably don't have a voice today. Thank goodness it's Easter Monday and some folks don't have to work. But fans we've been speaking to are very optimistic. They are hopeful that this could be the year the Leafs finally make a proper run in the playoffs, that the forecourt click. And
puck comes back to the blue
based
line.
on what they saw last night, they are very optimistic and have a good reason to do so. Beating out Ottawa 6-2. The core four also dominating, leading the way with 9 points combined. And different is the word that we've been hearing a lot from fans. This year feels different, and it actually is different. There's a different coach. There are 2 new goalies making that tandem with Joseph Woll and Anthony Stolarz. Earlier today, we spoke to a few hockey analysts, and here's their take on how fans should be feeling and where the Leafs go from here.
I think fans should feel optimistic. I mean, it does feel different. It really does. You got a new coach here in Craig Berube, a new goalie in Anthony Stolarz, who's been so good down the stretch, and a different opponent, right? The Ottawa Senators. They don't have as much experience as the Leafs. In all these series over the years, in this era, it's been a veteran, experienced team on the other side. Boston, Tampa, Florida, even Washington that first year. This time around, the Leafs are the more experienced team, and it's helping them so far.
It's one game. I don't think you can get too high or too low, but it's good to start this series with a victory, guys. I think the thing I really noticed yesterday was how prepared this team was. And taking nothing away from the previous administration, we have seen games like this before. Game 1 specifically for the Maple Leafs, where they played really, really good. 2022 against Tampa was a perfect example of that. But I just thought they were so prepared, confident. There was a real sense of confidence, not only when it came to the team on the ice, but the fan base in general leading into this game 1 of the Battle of Ontario. And I think it had Craig Berube's DNA all over in terms of the way the Maple Leafs want to play.
And in terms of fan experience and what you need to know, Maple Leaf Square last night was electric. Those tickets are free. All you need to do is go on the app, 1 p.m. the day of the game, sign up for them. It is a first come, first serve basis. So as you can imagine, those tickets will be snatched up in minutes. And we've also been asking fans, what is your prediction for the game? And they say the most popular answer we got is Leafs in 6. So Lena, Phil, what do you think? Are you saying Leafs in 6?
I do think it's a different regime now, Siege. I think Craig Berube scares a lot of people. He's a large man, large hands. I think they're going to want to do it. He's very intimidating. Yeah. You got a steely gaze on his face. And so I think they want to do him proud. I think maybe they drop 1 in Ottawa, so maybe Leafs in 5.
And you know what my answer is, Siege? What Phil said.
Yeah. Or you know what? We're all Leaf people, so
yes, what Phil said. Yeah, always right.
Right. No, it's not. No, it's not. Or we're a tortured bunch, and it could be just Leafs in 7, just to make everybody sweat.
Who knows? All we know is that they're doing well, and they're probably going to do very well tomorrow night.
I hope so.
One game at a time, right? All right, Siege Alou reporting live for us tonight. Thanks so much for the CJ. It's 5:29, 10 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
We come back. We go back to the Vatican, where there's a live shot right now. The world remembering Pope Francis after the pontiff passed away today on Easter Monday at the age of 88. More on his life and legacy.
It's just a very sad day. It's honestly, I think, impressive that he made it to Easter. I think that's almost like a miracle.
Catholics around the world mourning the death of Pope Francis. We have extensive coverage of the pontiff's passing tonight. We'll take it live to the Vatican and have reaction from here at home.
A traffic stop gone wrong. 2 officers opened fire on a group of 6 people in a car. 1 person is now in life-threatening condition. Take a look at the stunning video. We're going to tell you what happened.
And you have just over 3 hours to cast your ballot in the federal election. Early voting ends tonight at 9, and lineups have been reported across the country. More on that coming up.
Plus, the Battle of Ontario returns to the playoffs for the first time in 21 years, and it starts with the Leafs destroying the Sens in Game 1. Can they do it again tomorrow night?
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Phil Perkins. You're watching Live at 5. Our top story, the province's police watchdog investigating after a man was shot by police during a traffic stop in North York.
CTV Toronto's John Musselman joins us live with the latest on the story, including dramatic video of that shooting that started as a traffic stop. What happened next, John?
Well, Lena, it happened right behind me here on Shepherd Avenue, not far from Bathurst. We'll show you some video now. The car was boxed in by a police officer's cruiser at the front and the back. Now, the officer does approach the driver of the car. He's at the window of that car communicating with the driver, but then suddenly the officer steps back and gets in front of the car and starts firing his weapon. An officer at the back also begins firing. Now, police are alleging that someone in that car, we're told there were 6 people in that car, had fired a weapon, and that's caused the police reaction here. Now, 2 people at the scene were taken into custody. The officers were not injured, but we did speak to some neighbors across the street in a high-rise building who shot some video as well. It showed emergency responders performing CPR on a young man who was rushed to a hospital. He remains in critical condition. We did speak to the province's Special Investigations Unit. They've taken over this case. Here's what they had to tell us.
There were a total of 6 occupants in the vehicle that was stopped, and one of the males is in life-threatening condition in hospital. We don't yet know exactly information about the firearm that may or may not have been used. Early information indicates that there was an exchange of gunfire. That's what Toronto Police have told us. However, I'm unable to confirm that at this time.
Now, the SIU has officers on scene. They're collecting video as well as what we did today to try to piece together what happened. They also want to look at police body camera video and the video from the cruisers, which might help explain how this all started. Reporting live on the scene, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
All right, dramatic video, no doubt. Thanks so much for the report, John. All right, stay on the roads now. Let's check in on traffic. Adrian Tiayabwa, how's weather affecting things?
You know what? It's a mixed weather bag out there, Phil. We were dealing with some torrential downpours, and now it looks like we're getting a lull and it's subsiding and we're seeing a bit of sunshine. So that's some good news. So if your travels take you on the 401 westbound, not so good news. As you make your way in the collectors through Meadowvale, it's the 3 center lanes that are out. This is following an ongoing collision, and that is creating a little bit of a delay just as you make your way through. Headed towards the Gardner eastbound, this is just as you head through Royal York or on the approach to Park Lawn, is a collision. It does have that right lane blocked trying to get out of the downtown core via the Gardner westbound. The end of the on-ramp from Spadina partially blocked because of a stalled vehicle. Cars are weaving around but backing up the drive on to Spadina. And you know what? Outside of camera view, we're getting word of a collision blocking lanes on Steeles and Dufferin. I'll send it back to you both.
Adjoa, thanks so much. Well, the Catholic world is mourning Pope Francis tonight, who is widely considered one of the most progressive pontiffs in modern history.
The 88-year-old being remembered by many for his charming, humble, and candid style. And we're now learning more about the cause of his death. The Vatican says he died of a stroke that put him into a coma and led to heart failure. Francis was admitted to hospital on February 14th for a respiratory illness that then developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there before being released. He was history's first Latin American pontiff who signaled a very different tone for the church, stressing humility over hubris for a Catholic church plagued by scandal at the time. After being named Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he was elevated to Cardinal in 2001 and then eventually elected Pope in 2013.
Un profondo dolore devo annunciare la morte del nostro Santo Padre Francesco.
Following Catholic tradition, the pontiff's death was formally announced by a group of cardinals. The Vatican Camerlengo said Pope Francis, quote, taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially toward the poorest and the most marginalized.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buona Pasqua.
And this is just from yesterday. Hours before he died, Francis made an unplanned Easter appearance at St. Peter's Square, surprising thousands of worshippers. After waving to the crowd for several minutes, he asked an archbishop to read his speech, and it was about his global appeal for peace.
And Pope Francis's most lasting impact in Canada is likely to be his apology for the legacy of residential schools on Canadian soil. He apologized during a tour of Canada in 2022, months after meeting with an Indigenous delegation in Rome. That apology was one of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. The Pope said he was sorry that some members of the church participated in the abuse, cultural destruction, and forced assimilation of Indigenous peoples. Many Indigenous people said that apology was necessary, but some said it did not go far enough. The CEO of the Indigenous Reconciliation Group, Rose LeMay, joined us to talk more about the Pope's legacy.
He started on the streets ministering to those who were the most vulnerable, perhaps, in his community. And I think he brought that sense of humility with him. With humility comes learning. I don't know if he fully heard survivors, even when they were over in Rome and the first trip. But, his reflections, even while he was in Canada and returning home on the plane after, continued to integrate that new information. I think he also was transformed. He was learning. And I have a lot of respect for people in positions of power who can look back and think, you know what, I could do better.
And U of T anthropology professor Valentina Napolitano spoke to CP24 about the conclave that'll pick the next pope.
It's really interesting because he has elected a lot of non-European and non-North American kind of new cardinals in this kind of conclave. The cardinals can vote up to 80. And so the kind of conclave, which is like the parliament in kind of a secular way, the parliament of the governance of the church, has changed incredibly. Yet all these people from different parts of the world don't really know each other very well. So in the past, we had other conclaves where people knew each other already.
And the White House marked the Pope's death with a post on social media that read, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis," and was accompanied by pictures of President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance meeting with the late pontiff.
And Catholics in the Pope's home country, Argentina, gathered today for a mass honoring the late pontiff. The Archbishop of Buenos Aires called Francis, quote, the Pope of all humanity, and remembered his legacy by reminding congregants that there must be room for everyone in the church.
And reaction is pouring in from Catholic leaders across the city. For more on this, we go live to CP24's Melissa Duggan. It's been a really emotional day, Melissa.
It has been. And here at St. Michael's Cathedral in the heart of Toronto, today being marked as a day of sadness, but also a day of celebration, to celebrate the life of someone who meant so much to so many, who did so much for so many. And what we've been hearing here are the most recent plans that have been put in place to celebrate the life of Pope Francis. At 12:10 tomorrow, here at St. Michael's Cathedral, a lunchtime mass will be held with the Archbishop of Toronto. At 7:30 in the evening, there will be evening prayers. Of course, that open to the public. We've also been talking with the spokesperson for the local archdiocese, who was telling us more about the Pope's connection to Canada. Of course, that includes the Pope's sweeping tour of the country not too long ago. Here's some of his reflection.
For Canadians, the pilgrimage, the penitential pilgrimage he made to our country. I was blessed to be able to go over with the Indigenous delegation in March 2022. And, he listened. He spent hours listening to the survivors of residential schools, the elders, the young people who were there, heard their stories. He was so moved that he said, I want to come to Canada, not in a year or two, but I want to come in 3 months. And if you know anything about organizing a papal visit, 3 months to organize it is extremely challenging. But he said, I want to do this. This is important enough to me. And we remember that at that time he was 85 in a wheelchair. He had canceled a planned trip to Africa. So it was that important that he wanted to be on Canadian soil. To have that penitential pilgrimage to really open a new chapter of healing and reconciliation in our country.
It's a very, very sad situation, of course. We kind of expected it to come because he'd been struggling very badly with this double pneumonia that he had. And he is also quite old, so It was quite a strain on him. But it was good of him that he came out and blessed everybody on Easter Sunday. That was wonderful to see.
The world needs to look at Pope Francis's message, and these migrants, the poor, that's the face of our Lord, and that's Pope Francis's message.
So remembering the Pope's humility, his compassion today, and certainly a lot of people want to share their thoughts, their feelings at this time. Starting tomorrow afternoon here at St. Michael's Cathedral, a book of condolence will be open to the public. It's expected to be here. There's a chance to sign it until after the Pope's funeral. Of course, arrangements for that still have to be made. And something else we're learning here, Phil and Lena, the Archbishop of Toronto is expected to travel to Rome, and that's expected to happen on Wednesday. Back to you.
Okay, lots to come there on that front. Melissa Duggan reporting live. Thanks so much, Melissa. It's now 5:43, 10 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, Election Day, 1 week away from today. And today's the last day for the advanced polls. We'll let you know what you need to cast your ballot.
Welcome back. A losing start to the trading week for the markets.
Yeah, don't look at your RSPs. In New York, the Dow dropped 2.5% as U.S. President Donald Trump continues his tough talk on global trade. Also hanging over the markets are worries about Trump's anger at Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell for not cutting interest rates. Stocks were also down in Toronto, but the losses were not as steep as in New York. TSX fell 184 points on a 0.75%.
After being in effect for over a month, the cost of U.S. President Donald Trump's metal tariffs is starting to add up. Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum imports back on March 12th. Alcoa Corporation says it took a $20 million U.S. hit from tariffs in the first quarter, and that they could lead to $90 million in additional costs in the second quarter. The Pittsburgh-based company, which is also one of Canada's largest aluminum producers, says higher prices are expected to offset some of those costs.
And no doubt the economy is a big talking point in this federal election. Yeah, and the federal election day is 1 week from today. And today is the final day for advanced polls. They'll be open for this election. They close up around 9 p.m.
Yeah. For a closer look at this, we're joined live by John Beebe, Director of the Democratic Engagement Exchange at Toronto Metropolitan University. Want to make sure we said your last name right there, did we?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, awesome. Wanted to be sure of that. Thanks for joining us, John. Elections Canada has announced a record turnout on the first day of advanced voting. We know nearly 2 million Canadians showed up to cast their ballots. It's pretty impressive. What do you take from that, and what does that tell you about this election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, the trends recently have been in declining voter turnout, so that's really encouraging to see the uptake there and to see that people are showing up on Good Friday, on a holiday, to get out and vote. We have to wait and see the final numbers for advanced voting. Advanced voting isn't always a big tell on total numbers in the end, but it's a good indication that people are enthusiastic. And we're seeing that in the work we do across the country, engaging with communities, that there's a lot of enthusiasm for this election. So I'm hoping we get to reverse those trends.
Yeah, and you talk about engaging with the community, hearing from your staff, boots on the ground. What are they hearing from people, like the types of people, the age groups, more importantly? We always hear about the younger generations not really that tuned in to these types of things. Are they hearing, what are you hearing about who's coming out to these advanced polls? And why?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a good sense necessarily of who's coming out to the advanced polls. Elections Canada has the Vote on Campus program that they just wrapped up last week. And we were on campuses here at TMU and across the country. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for voting. What we didn't see as much is sort of having the time to build awareness and enthusiasm on campus. That outreach with a snap election makes it super tough. And it was also exam period, which always makes it harder to do that outreach to young people. But I think there is overall in Canada a sort of a unity around wanting to do something for Canada, stand up, to when we talked about the tariffs, standing up to the tariffs. Here's a chance for us to say, elbows up, and let's vote. Let's do something for Canada.
Every election is so important, and it's such an important part of our democracy. But this one, the stakes just seem so high when you talk about those tariffs. Many have said this is also a change election. We're seeing two leaders who have never run before. Is that why you think these numbers might be so high, because of everything that's at stake here?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I think there is this sort of sense of threat to Canada's sovereignty, to our economic well-being. And of course, people are, care passionately about that. We've also seen that, elections matter. Donald Trump is president of the United States because a lot of people didn't show up to vote. People who've historically supported Democrats didn't show up to vote in that election. And as a result, we have Donald Trump as president of the United States. So elections do matter, and people know that.
Yeah, people show up, they vote, and things happen. All right, John Beebe, Director of Democratic Engagement Exchange at TMU. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Good to have you on tonight. It's 5:50, 10 degrees now. You're watching Live at 5.
Leafs fans feeling pretty good about themselves in the Battle of Ontario against the Sens. We'll get a reaction. Welcome back, Maple Leaf playoff hockey. It's a thing now against the Senators. And start off on the right foot, or skate.
It sure did. For a look at that and a look ahead to tomorrow's Game 2, we go live to CP24. Sija Lou, who's been hanging out with some Leaf fans. What are you hearing tonight, Sija?
Phil, fans are saying you couldn't have asked for a better start to the playoffs for the Leafs. I mean, a 6-2 win over the Senators. The Battle of Ontario was pretty much all Toronto, start from strong to finish. And that strong game has a lot of Leafs fans thinking, is this year going to be different? Is this finally going to be the season where the Leafs make a legitimate playoff push and the core is clicking? You saw the 4 core last night combining for 9 points, doing a fantastic job setting the tone for the Leafs going into the rest of the series. But fans are saying right now they don't want to get too high on the highs and lows off the lows, because we've been here before, and when it comes to round ones, that is a sore spot for the Leafs. But we spoke to Mark Masters, a TSN analyst, as well as some fans, to take the temperature on how they're feeling after Game 1.
Let's see how far this goes. I mean, it could be an historic run. Obviously, we haven't seen a Stanley Cup since '67, but I'll say this: they haven't gone up 2-0 in a series in this era. So even a win in Game 2 here on Tuesday night, go up 2-0, would make it feel even more different and really set the stage for a long run, maybe.
I thought they played well. That's one of the best playoff games they've played recently. So I'm feeling very confident about the team and how they're going to play.
I thought they came out hard, fast, a lot of great hits. OEL opened it up. We had our defense doing some great stuff. Stoli in net, and the core 4 was fantastic. So it was pretty exciting.
I'll probably go Leafs in 7. I think it'll be close. I think Ottawa played well last game, but I think Leafs just have more firepower.
And yesterday night, we were live from Maple Leaf Square all night long during the game, and the energy was just electric. Fans had their eyes glued to the big screen watching every single move. And if you want to join in on that action tomorrow for Game 2, puck drop is 7:30 here at home again. You'll need to go on the Maple Leafs app at 1 p.m. That is when those tickets drop. It's first come, first serve, so they will be going fast. And if it was anything like Game 1, Game 2 will be very energetic. But one more thing to point out, a lot of the fans that we've been speaking with are looking ahead of this series and say they just want a Canadian team to win a cup this year. So that's all fans are asking for.
No. Even if you lose to the Sens, you can't be happy because you want a Canadian team to win. No, I'm not down with that, Sija. But we'll see. Leafs in 5. Thank you.
Thanks, Sija.
It's 5-6. You're watching Live at 5.
And this is a live look at the Vatican tonight, where the world is remembering Pope Francis after he passed away today on Easter Monday at the age of 88. Stay with us as our coverage.
Welcome back to the world, remembering the life and legacy of Pope Francis after he passed away today at the age of 88.
The Vatican says Francis died of a stroke that put him into a coma and led to heart failure. He was history's first Latin American pontiff who signaled a very different tone for the papacy, stressing humility. This is a live shot of the Vatican where thousands of mourners are expected to continue to gather. We're going to have much more on that coming up. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News, CP24. Thanks for watching. CTV News is next.